This video actually means a lot more to me than people might think. 10 years ago, I started my journey on YouTube as an avid video creator, making pretty much whatever I felt like at the time. I didn't care about views, and I only really did it as a hobby. One of those videos was a Doom 64 review where I had the complete package. Windows Movie Maker intro, bad audio, 120p resolution. Man, those are the good times. 10 years later, and right before Doom Eternal hits the shelves, Doom 64 returns with added features, PC capability, and a new chapter called The Lost Levels. Doom 64 was the game that got a very young me into FPS. Other games like Quake and Turok would definitely be on that list too, and believe it or not, this new version had Night Dive Studios in the mix, who worked on the new versions of the first two Turok games over the past few years as well. I went into this very optimistic, and wasn't disappointed at all. Doom 64 spent a lot of its lifespan as a Nintendo 64 exclusive. Thanks to modern technology, avid Doom 64 fans have been able to play up-to-date versions of the game because of Doom 64 EX or Brutal Doom 64. This, though, is an easy-to-access install and play edition, which has had some real love and care put into it in an official capacity. Thanks so much to Bethesda UK for providing me with a copy of the game, so I could revisit the nightmare all over again. This is the new Doom 64, and all of the footage that you see in this video was captured on the Watch Me Die difficulty setting, for old time's sake. This video was captured using the Steam version, mouse and keyboard controls. It felt silky smooth, and once I'd set up my custom key bindings, I was pretty much well on my way. The controls are classic style left and right look. If you've never played a classic shooter before, this will come across as pretty strange to you, but trust me on this when I say that these games were built for this kind of control method, and it's not as restricting as you might think. A great trip down memory lane for me, and once I'd enabled some mouse smoothing, it felt a lot better. Lower the sensitivity too if that's what you're into, because for me, it could be a little bit too high. First of all, Doom 64 back in the day was notoriously dark. Usually I'd mean setting and visuals, but no, genuinely the game was almost pitch black at times. Now, the game is perfectly clear and you can see everything, which is an automatic bonus straight out of the box. The thing is, the increase in brightness doesn't take away from the atmosphere, which was one of the game's biggest selling points when it first came out. Doom, back in the 90s, was a lot more run-and-gun style. MIDI rock music played in the background, and the colours were vibrant and out there. Doom 64 went with much more of a horror approach, extremely visceral themes, dark corridors, horrendously creepy music. I mean, just listen to this gameplay for a second. I didn't add this music in. This is genuinely the soundtrack and what was being fed directly into my headphones. Everything just looks evil. Even the Cacodemon, which is usually the cutest little thing. I mean, come on, it's got a cute little plushie, and now it's, oh my god, you're grinning at me and I don't like it. Why do you have arms now? Come on. The tone can make you feel really uncomfortable at times, especially when you're on harder difficulties and enemy traps are constant. One thing to note is the save game feature. You can save the game anytime you want, and it's kind of a free checkpoint. You don't have to use it, you can give yourself more challenge if you wish and play without it, but the levels get quite long, so make sure you're prepared for that. I did a no save run after my first playthrough, and it was a damn sight more tense. Horror in games for me is mostly the fear of losing ages of progress and having to go through the gauntlet all over again. Backtracking is not fun. Let's do a demon roll call real quick. It's a good opportunity to get a look at them now if anybody plays Eternal and recognizes some familiar and ugly faces. The zombie man is the basic enemy. Layer 1, pretty much. They fire a basic pistol shot. The shotgunners are identical visually, but they fire a much higher damaged shotgun blast. They have hit scan, so make sure you stay out of their line of sight. You can't dodge them unless they can't see you. Imps are the next step up. A little bit tougher, but they're the first enemy you encounter that fire projectiles. It's a good introduction to learning attack patterns and, more importantly, learning how to dodge. Nightmare imps are more see-through and they're harder to spot in general. Still pretty easy to take down, but they come in numbers and are really good at using up your chain gun ammo. Pinky, aka the Bull Demon. A brute that is melee only, but more of a damage sponge. Effective at putting your back to a wall if you're not careful. The Spectre. Like the Pinky, but almost completely invisible. Make sure you're listening out for their sound cue when they're close by. It's sometimes the only way to know they're there. Lost Souls. Honestly, these things are total assholes in every Doom game. They are super easy to take down, but their main strength is being right in front of you just as you fire a rocket. Or, because you can't go over or under enemies thanks to the engine, getting you stuck by what looks like absolutely nothing. Kill them as soon as you see them. You'll do yourself a great service. I always thought the Pain Elemental in this game looked like it was ripped right out of John Carpenter's The Thing. They only exist to dispense lost souls. Again, you're better off treating these as public enemy number 1. Get rid of them. Hell Knight. Large and kind of like a more threatening version of the Imp. Often placed in positions where it's really inconvenient for you, and it's important that you learn their attack pattern and when to dodge their projectiles. Baron of Hell. Like the Hell Knight, but red, which always means they're nastier. They soak up more fire, but attack the exact same way as the Hell Knight. Caco Demon. They fly around and they shoot at you. Really good at blocking your path, and they really don't like the rocket launcher. Arachnotron. Grounded and pretty damaging thanks to their plasma cannons. The trick is to keep them at distance and wait for most of their attacks burst to come out. Then dodge. Their attacks track, but only during the burst. Moving afterwards keeps their fire concentrated in one place, especially useful for the big group fights. Mancubus. They're big boys, and they're a bit tougher to dodge because they fire 2 shots for the price of 1. You have to be a bit more reactionary when moving out of their way. I always thought they had the most disgusting death animation. Look at it, it's disgusting. Finally, the Cyber Demon. You don't find them much in this game, but when you do, they're as intimidating as anything. Huge damage, very hard to kill, and they tower over everything else. Genuinely, these things actually gave me nightmares as a kid. I'm not going to talk about the final boss too much because it's sick and worth checking out for yourself. She's a beaut. We do miss demons such as the Archvile or the Revenant, which is my personal favourite demon, but they wouldn't make the final cut. Supposedly, back in the day, this was due to limitations of the N64 cartridge space or something like that, but we do see some homing missile traps, which is kind of like the Revenant shoulder cannons, but without a spindly, fleshy skeleton to go along with it. It just isn't the same, is it? We've covered the demons, now let's cover the many ways you can blow them to pieces. The pistol. You'll only use this in probably level 1. It's the default weapon that you start with. It does low damage and really is only there to give you something to shoot with off the bat. I always loved the chainsaw in 64 because it's double-barreled. Unnecessarily overkill if you really think about it, but it's super satisfying. Also, very effective versus the Pinky. The shotgun is effective for a bit of damage and some range. Again, it's a basic weapon for early stages. Super Shotgun is a better replacement, but it uses more ammo. It's kind of your staple weapon across the board because it's got great damage and it's effective at a lot of different ranges. You find yourself kind of counting how many shots it takes to take a demon down in your head as you go. It makes for some satisfying combat to memorize how many shots each demon takes. Chain Gun is the rapid fire option, and it works wonders for long range and dispatching large groups of the weaker demons. Rocket Launcher is another staple in your combat arsenal. Massive damage and mandatory in the later levels where stronger demons take center stage. Just don't use it up close. Splash damage is super unforgiving in the game. Plasma Rifle does great damage and it can really spam out larger groups of tough enemies. It shares ammo with another weapon though, so don't go too crazy. That other weapon is the BFG. No Doom game is complete without it, and it is as juicy as we all remember. But the sound effect, oh man, this weapon is sick, and it always has been. Seriously, the BFG is probably one of the coolest weapons in any game, period. Finally, the Unmaker is a Doom 64 exclusive. It shares the ammo of the Plasma and the BFG, but it's this crazy demon beam rifle that's kind of unimpressive at first. But if you collect the hidden demon keys throughout the game, which I didn't do because I can never find the hidden levels, it powers up to the point of brokenness. It becomes even more dangerous than the BFG if it's maximum charge. Very good times. Gameplay-wise, it's like all of the old Dooms. You navigate level by level, collect keys, open up new areas, and watch out for traps along the way. The longer you progress through the game, the longer the levels get, and the greater challenge that is presented to you. As somebody who played on exclusively the hardest difficulty setting, it was awesome. The quantity of enemies and stuff is obviously a lot more extreme than if you played on the other settings, but for me, it just felt right to play on this difficulty, because now I have a mouse and keyboard control method, I was able to be as fast and snappy as I wanted to, and the upped brightness left me with no disadvantage that was out of my hands. And it truly was a trip down memory lane, but a substantial upgrade in pretty much every single way. This, to me, has become the superior way to experience Doom 64. The thing is, it was when I reached the later stages and started running out of ammo a lot that it got me thinking of all the times I didn't run out of ammo and I took it for granted. Just running gunning all over the place with no care in the world. How foolish I was. You're never out of ammo to the point of being completely helpless though. You just kind of need to reassess each room and try to ensure that you've got the right weapon left for the job. I hadn't played a single player shooter in so long that these small details of micromanaging the stuff that you have left near the end stages of a particularly tough level can be crazy engaging and incredibly rewarding at the end. You fight tooth and nail through a level without much health left, and when you finally see that exit sign, click that switch and watch the screen fade to red. The sigh of relief combined with the heavy pounding stats is an intense finish. This level is complete. Now entering whatever nightmare lies on the other side. That said, I don't remember some of the levels being so hard to navigate at first glance. You can really feel like a dumbass when you've clicked a switch and you're really trying to remember the layout of the map and think what could have opened or changed. And for the life of you, you just can't figure it out. Then, at the height of your frustration, you see some random door that is now open and you realize you completely forgot about it. For people that never really played old shooters, this idea of memorizing everywhere you've just been in case something opens later on is gonna feel really strange. But I promise it's worth it to feel that sense of satisfaction at the end. You really need to think, and the game rewards you for an eye for level design. There's a solid amount of maps to go through. Combine that with the hidden maps and there's a decent amount there. You go through more human-looking constructs first, then through very demonic and evil landscapes. The increased brightness really lets the colours stand out more, and it's a lot more reminiscent of the older Dooms that came before it. The original Doom 64 on N64 looked a bit washed out, and the brightness made everything look extremely muddy. This version is a lot more pleasing to the eyes, and it shows the landscapes in greater detail. Before we finish up, I want to cover the new content. The Lost Levels is Doom 64's new mission pack, in a sense, a collection of new maps to explore and an expansion of the story via the conclusion. In a small and concentrated manner, you navigate the same kind of progression of visual themes. Each map has its own colour palette, and you get the impression that you're diving deeper and deeper into hell as each of the maps progress. My initial concern when I found out about these new maps was that you'd kind of go through the motions of a brand new game all over again. Sometimes with new levels like this, it's almost built from the impression that it's the first thing that you play, so the half of the new content is too easy, and it's something that you're not likely to revisit, unless you're going for a speedrun or something. I didn't find that to be the case in these Lost Levels. A healthy challenge is presented, and again, this is coming from my first run through being on max difficulty. But the game understands that you've just beat the game to already reach this point. You know everything you need to know, and the challenge simply progresses from that point onwards. It still feels like Doom 64. Visually, it's well put together. You're given just enough resources to progress through, and the natural equipment progression of the main game is a lot more concentrated here, almost giving you a from start to finish Doom 64 experience in a much smaller amount of time. I gotta say, the final map, appropriately called Final Judgment, feels like a development of the original finale, the Absolution. It uses the demon keys for a single map approach and can kind of be exploited if you know what you're doing. I actually found myself seeing how fast I could beat this final map by exploiting the 2 invulnerabilities and max-powered Unmaker. If you shoot the mother demon right as she spawns, she can't teleport and relocate to surprise you and run out the invincibility time. You get to utterly dismantle the Legions of Hell in a few minutes, a fitting finale for a highly enjoyable collection of new content. Now, I didn't want to go too in detail here, and I highly encourage you to get this game and try it for yourself. If you've played Doom 64 growing up, this is a fantastic way to experience it once more. If you haven't encountered classic FPS before, this is a perfect example of the genre, and a wonderful playable piece of video game history. An inside look over why this franchise is so beloved by Doom heads around the world. I'm now going to dive headfirst into Doom Eternal, so thank you for watching, I hope you give this game a go, and I'll see you in hell.